Okay, so recently we talked about how people are subbing and unsubbing as soon as new content is available, and not sticking around to explore the game. Accessibility has been a pretty spammed phrase by Blizzard ever since Naxxramas Point 1. Loads of excellent content was created and no one got to see it. Blizz saw this as a bad thing. Well, obviously it is, right? They spent months creating this enormous dungeon and nobody got to get in there and actually experience it. It just went to waste. As such, over the past few expansions, more and more methods have been developed in order to let players see the content regardless of time commitments or even ability to actually play. Has this gone too far though? With very easy accessibility to the latest content, what is there to incentivize and drive new players to become better and see what the game has to offer? What is the reason they should stick around? WoW, in my opinion, is the richest and most diverse gaming world ever created, and it's the reason I've been here since the start. Even Mists of Pandaria is shaping up to be the best expansion ever. Yet player retention is down, subs are down, so what the hell is going on? Can we just blame this on the fact that there are other games to choose from? This video is going to piss people off and cause a lot of fanboyism. I'll be passed off as wine, rose-tinted goggles, the usual crap that gets thrown around after such content. It's important to note that I love this game, I want it to thrive, and I wish to highlight a system that is causing it to bleed and nothing more. You'll be surprised to know that there are lots of new players joining WoW every single day. There are millions of people playing this game, and word of mouth spreads. In fact, probably the best marketing Blizzard could ever hope for is the fact that usually you've got a friend who plays WoW and tells you how good it is. They don't know of the depth and richness of the game when they just start. Of course, they just see what's placed in front of them. So what happens after hitting 90? We live in a state of the game where they are invited to a guild bent on just collecting repair money before they even finish the opening cutscene. A guild that offers no support, essentially trapping them. Leaving the guild only means by being spammed by others immediately, until they may or may not discover to switch off the option to be randomly added by guilds. After asking the question in trade, I just hit 90, what should I do? The overwhelming response was to do heroics, then LFR, and then gear up. The same advice that most people pass on to their friends, the same advice that most people get when they hit level 90. Throne of Thunder is the latest raid, and the last boss in the game is considered to be Lei Shen. Raden, of course, being an optional boss for heroic raiders only. So we need an experiment. How quickly can a new player who is undoubtedly bad kill the last boss of the game? How can I become the worst raider imaginable? Is it just low damage? How about zero damage? Well, that wouldn't make me the worst. I also need to be a burden to healers. So should I die? That won't really work either. I should live, but I should take more damage than anyone else. Doing zero damage, taking maximum amounts of damage, below the tanks of course, that would pretty much make me the worst possible player to ever have in your LFR. Will players complain? Will they help me? Will I be unable to reach Lei Shen like this? Let's find out. The character I'm going to do this on is my rogue. He's one of my bankers, and one of my few characters without some variation of preaching his name in order to prevent recognition as much as possible. When we started, he has 9 hours played, purely at the auction house, and enough gear from leveling to enter 5-man heroics. Everyone in the groups I play with is 100% pug. No guildies or friends are joined in any phase of this. Phase 1, 5-man dungeons, aiming to get enough gear to enter the LFR. That's what I've been told by the community, so I shall do it. I will do absolutely zero damage and attempt to take as much damage as possible without dying. This is the section of the experiment I actually feared the most. Being useless in such a small group is indeed more noticeable, and I expected to get a lot of hassle. This did not happen. In fact, I was completely protected by the rules of the game. Each group had an impatient tank, so I was always in combat and could not be kicked. As the dungeon was easily clearable without me, or anyone else, or even another DPS, it took me only 4 dungeons to get a couple of items and the points to acquire some PvP braces, something recommended to me by people in trade. In each dungeon, my slack was neither mentioned or cared about. More to the point, besides the usual highs in which I responded, no one ever spoke again. Phase 1 was complete very, very quickly. On to Phase 2, first stage of LFR, Part 1 and 2. I suspected this would be the most grueling, as I would need to be really lucky with drops to reach the next levels of LFR. I used the coins from the Isle of Thunder. I used the key to reduce my time running the experiment, although it would be diminished on second runs, as I wouldn't get double chances of loot per boss kill. This was the most interesting and revealing segment to me, as it became clear that by doing zero damage, I was practically invisible to the group, even though I was taking more damage than anyone else in most cases, as with 5-mans I was neither noticed or mentioned by anyone. I attempted at one point to make myself more obvious by using the follow command with another rogue. This was in fact the first time I was noticed and removed from the group. More importantly, I wasn't even punished by this. I was able to instantly re-queue. Despite this not being a test of trying to AFK a dungeon, it was interesting to note that only by doing something stupidly obvious would it draw the attention of other players. So we go back to the zero damage technique, and after a few zero drop runs, we eventually moved on to phase 3 after a little bit of luck. Phase 3, Throne of Thunder. By this time, it's pretty apparent that I am going to be able to complete this, and as there is no more gear limitations, there's no restrictions on item level anymore, and I have no fears of being removed or even spoken to by any other player. I have been invisible throughout phase 2, so now I will attempt to do horrific damage in order to be more noticeable. As I'm playing an assassination rogue, I will simply remove my poisons. Use no slice and dice or envenom. Only rupture. This will effectively cut my DPS by about 70 to 80%, but I will still appear on the damage meter. Interestingly, I wasn't even that far away from other players, which furthers the point that there are so many players who either don't know what they're doing or are simply too lost to care anymore. Lei Shen eventually fell and the experiment is now complete. Final boss of the current game defeated by the worst player imaginable, without consequence, without ever knowing that I was even doing badly. I got no guidance or reason to try harder in any way. Overall, it took me a day's play, including the queue times, to see the latest and greatest raid dungeon Mr. Pandaria has to offer. Of course, the next logical step would be to do normal and heroic modes, but now we must take into account the jump from LFR to even simple normal mode, timed raids, trial process, applications, etc., which in comparison to what was done initially is an enormous leap in commitment, which only a few will take. I must point out that the apathy of the community is one of the big struggles here, and it's only by Blizzard's reckoning that this has happened. It's disturbing, and I know some people are going to try and defend this as well. I do this, LFR is great for me. It's not exactly pointed directly at LFR. LFR was the method that was recommended to me. If I'd been recommended solely to do PvP, I would have tried that to see how quickly we could gear up. I don't think it would have taken much longer either, as we are guaranteed to get honor points regardless of win or loss. It's a sad state of affairs, and I know some people try and defend it, but I have to ask you why. Why do you want to defend this? Why would you defend this situation? I did nothing. I was the worst player imaginable. I never got hassled. The community didn't try and help me. The community certainly didn't try and remove me. And as such, people are doing this every single day. And there are so many players falling into this trap of, I've played the game for a couple of days and I finished it. I literally have a couple of days played on this character and I have seen all the raid content that this game has to offer. And I did it without ever trying. I did it without ever being abused. I did it without ever having any remote incentive to possibly get better and to see something more in this game. That is the problem. This whole system is just too accessible. We've gone too far and it needs to be toned back. The system just isn't working. Don't look at it from the perspective of you who has played the game for ages. I know what's out there. I've been there and I've done it, and I know that, yeah, it's LFR, it's nothing. You tell that to a new player. I got the exact 5-piece bonus. I have all the gear that I could have collected from those dungeons. I have the set. It looks exactly the same as the better raiders. I just look and feel like I've done it because I have killed the boss. I have the achievement. Whether it's LFR, normal, or heroic means nothing to a new player. Describe heroic mode to a new player. Well, you get better gear. Oh, that's cool. But it's considerably harder. There's going to be lots of wiping. Going to get lots of costs, lots of bills. You have to farm potions. You have to be there at a certain time. There's no guarantee on loot by any means. You have to play with other players. You've got a trial process to go through. It sounds very off-putting in comparison to what you can get by logging in whenever the fuck you please and simply queuing up and still killing the last boss. New players don't know the difference. And this is why they're bleeding out. This is why they're not sticking around. This is why guilds aren't being formed other than paltry 10-mans with aspirations of greatness spawning all over every server like a plague. And while the big guilds who are trying to do something are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. Because there are no new players, or very, very few, who have any incentive, any drive to be more than what they are already doing, and which is so considerably easier. No punishment. Punishment isn't always a bad thing. To be told that you need to try harder, or perhaps, God forbid, somebody try and help and say, hey, you're not having poisons on. I played with a number of rogues. Don't tell me none of them noticed that I wasn't anywhere near the damage meter. Don't tell me that happened. I know some people are going to try and defend this, but I don't know why you would. This needs to change. It needs to change. It has to change. Because we'll just have no new players, and an ever-dwindling amount of the older players just disappearing eventually until the big game comes that we all move to. We don't want that. This game is rich. It's made by one of the best developers in the world who pile time and time again into producing good raid content. Throne of Thunder is a wonderful raid. It's diminished. It's useless. It's absolutely pointless to most players. Is it worse? Ask yourself this. Is it worse that you had a brilliant raid that not many got to see, or that you had an amazing raid that was a limp-dicked version that most people saw? That was nothing compared to what you'd actually created, and was in fact just an absolute ghost of a shell of it. Is it better for players to walk away saying, well, I didn't get to that raid, but I know it's really good, everyone tells me? Or is it better that new players come away saying, oh, I did the new raid last night, yeah, it looked pretty cool, it had some nice special effects and stuff. Do you want that? Is that better? Is that better? I don't think so. Alright guys, you take it easy and I'll see you again.